Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to bring this Board of Finance town hearing to order. I'm Michael Anderson. I'm the chair. I'm joined with Dan Smith and Lou Gingerella, who are also on the board. Winona Burdines in the audience, Carl Johnson, Ed McGowan. Raise your hand if I'm missing you. But I'd like to start off tonight. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so just, there's no real agenda posted as far as what's going on. I'm just going to give a couple opening remarks. And then Bob Carlson will come up and give us the general government budget. And Christine and Troy can do the Board of Ed presentation. And then I'll have a presentation from the Board of Finance, kind of wrapping it all up and telling you where we are. And then I'm opening it up for public comment, because that's what we're here for tonight, is to show you the budgets, tell you kind of where we're thinking, mill rate wise, projections, and get feedback from you, because then we go back and decide if we need to do changes based upon your feedback. So, what you say here tonight could or could not change the budgets as they're presented now. I'd like you to know how proud I am of the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen and this board in the amount of work that they put in to give what I feel are amazing budgets. Sometimes it's a thankless job, but these people, the people that represent the town on these boards, just do an amazing job, and I hope it's you see it reflected in these budgets tonight. And so I just want to, give my thanks to them for all the time and effort they put into it. With that, we'll have Bob come up and give the general government.
Thank you. A couple of quick things. There will be food delivered later. We just had a Vietnam veteran ceremony across the street. So a lot of leftover grinders, pizzas. So we had a choice. We said, why don't we bring it here? I'm not trying to bribe any of the residents with this food. This will not happen again at the town meeting. It's going to happen one time only. But it was a wonderful event with the Vietnam veterans. And I think some of the people that were there, like Brent was over there, and he's back here now. And would you agree it was a good event, right? Perfect. So yeah, so sometime in the next half hour, you'll see food appearing on those back tables. And by all means, take whatever you want to take. So rather than try to look at the screen, if you have the Board of Selectmen budget presentation and you have the budget itself, that's all you're going to need. You can look on when we go through this. It'll be easier to see it that way. Unlike when my two predecessors who were here, Nick Mullane and Sean Murphy, said if we had Mike Gergel here, we'd have every first selectman for the last 50 years sitting here, but we got two other ones. I remember going to the old multi-purpose room across the street, and we go line item by line item. So what I tried to do is summarize it a bit for you, but if there's any question about any line item that you want to ask me, I can tell you the answer. I'll give you the answer. But in the meantime, we're going to be using this. This is the budget presentation and referring to the budget as needed. So the very first thing you'll see is the budget summary. So the budget summary is basically how we derive our questions for the town meeting. So the government operating budget, which is a 3.32% increase. The debt budget is a 11.32% increase, and the capital budget is a negative 41.97% decrease. And Mike Anderson will explain that later and how that all came to be. So it shows the overall budget of all four, which is inclusive of the Board of Ed budget. It's a 1.82% increase. Now, you may have known that last year we moved $100,000 from the Board of Education budget to the Board of Selectmen budget, town budget. We did that for a reason, because the town owns the buildings that the school operates in. We felt that we had Unlike the older buildings that got old and they didn't get repaired, we felt we wanted to put extra eyes on these buildings to make sure we just spent a lot of money to have these buildings built or refurbished, and we want to make sure they stay that way for a number of years. So we took $100,000 last year out of the Board of Ed budget, and we did that for maintenance and repairs. This year, we took another $100,000 out, but this is for contracts. So if you have an elevator contract or you have a contract with the heating and air conditioning people, it's a year contract, it's a service contract, and we took $100,000 for that. If you took that $100,000 out of our budget, we'd be down to a 1.18% increase on the Board of Selectmen budget. So we're at 3.32. We can all turn the page, and so there's a little bit of a history of what started. So back on March 3rd, believe it or not, we had a 14.08% budget. That's with no cuts, no reductions. That's the first time we saw it. That's when I get all the information from the boards and the committees in town, and what will it take us to run your budget next year? And it was a 14.8% increase, which the Board of Selectmen had never seen an increase that high. I think in the 4 years I've been here, we might have seen a 7.5, but never a 14.8. So we immediately started doing some reductions. By March 6th, after the first Board of Selectmen meeting, we got down to 8.06. On March 17th, we brought it down to 7.86. March 26th, we brought it down to 3.32. Now, of course, there's Board of Finance meetings happening, Board of Ed meetings happening, so we're getting feedback from the Board of Finance while we're doing this. On April 1st, you'll see there's an asterisk next to that draft. It went from 3.32 back up to 8.31. So how did that happen? So what's happening is there's this little building being built over on the Escape Road. It's called EB. It's 480,000 square foot building. It's being built. So the thing is, when a building like that's being built, and it's going to be 18 months to build it, we had to hire a separate building inspector because there's going to be so many inspections being done on a regular basis. There could be 5 inspections in one day because there are going to be multiple crews working in there. We have a part-time building inspector who's full-time Groton, part-time North Stonington. There's no way he could handle this, and there's no way the government's going to say, well, we'll wait 3 days for your inspector to show up and he'll inspect it. So what we decided to do is hire another inspector, and we have building inspector fees coming in, building permit fees coming in that already exceed what we're going to be paying this inspector. We expect to pay the inspector about $300,000 over 18 months to 2 years. We expect over $500,000 worth of fees coming into the town. We've already accepted $369,000 worth of fees. So the Board of Finance at first said, well, let's see what the budget looks like if we have those $300,000 in expenses next year. So we put them in there, and the budget went from 3.32 to 8.31. Obviously, when you're looking at the budget and you're in the voting booth, and I can be standing next to you explaining this to you, we said that's not going to fly. No one's going to want to vote for an 8.31% increase. So the Board of Finance allowed us to take it back out, take the money out of the undesignated fund, which you'll see at the town meeting. We're going to appropriate that money, which we already have, but it has to go to a town meeting for final approval. So now we're going to be paying that $300,000 out of that appropriation. So it's like taking money out, earmarking it, but we already have enough money to put it back when the year after the year ends. So the net gain to the taxpayers is about $200,000 in revenue. So that's why we put it in. You see what it did. It turned into 8.31, and we took it back out again. Turn the page. So how do we do it? So there's large reductions. We reduced the medical insurance by $40,665. I talked to the board of, the North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company. They want to have full-time per diems, and they would like to have 24/7 per diems. So they always have 2 people there that are on the clock to drive the engines when there's a call. A lot of times when they don't have volunteers available or people are working, they don't have per diems, especially nights and weekends. So what we did was we said, we originally had this in the budget, and I asked them, is it okay, can we push this back 1 year? So it was a 3-year plan to put in a third of those people this year, a third next year, and a third the following year, so we'd be 100% covered. I said, can we start this next year? And they agreed to let it start next year. So that's what we did. On the LoCIP, which is a local capital improvement program, that is money that comes from the state, but if we don't spend it this year, we're not going to lose it. We still have money left over from this year. We'll be using in May and in June, but we have $75,078 that we will not take next year and not use for the roads, but we're not going to lose that money. We'll just go into the next year's funds. Town road maintenance, $160,000 comes from the taxpayers. When you're asked to cut a budget down, and we're coming through a reval year, we have to cut this budget down to as bare bones as we can. There's only so many places you can go. In years past, what the town would do would say, let's go right to the capital budget. And we could just take out one truck worth $250,000 and we just bring the budget right down. The Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen agreed 2 or 3 years ago that we don't want to do that anymore because you end up with antiquated equipment. You're always making repairs. Your equipment is never up to speed. And we said, we're going to come up with a 5, a 10, and a 20-year capital plan and stick to it. So we actually approve our capital plan back in November and December. And then once it's approved, we don't go back to it and change it again. So I don't have the ability to go back and take a truck out. So where else can I take it out? Well, if you take out $1,000 or $1,500 in every line item in the budget, you'll never get there. It's better to take out a bigger number. So by taking out this 160 from the taxpayers' money, it's the taxpayers' money paying to get the roads fixed. It's somewhere we can take a 1-year pause and say, well, what our roads are going to do? They're going to fall apart. First, our roads are in very good shape. Secondly, we have another line in the budget where the state's going to give us, it's called State Aid Road, and they're going to give us $319,058. So we still have $319,000 to work on the roads. So our roads are starting in good shape, and we have $319,000 to use, plus the money we have left over from this year's LoSiP money. So it's not like we're running the cupboard dry. We have money in the budget, but if we had to have a big number somewhere to pull out, that's where we went. And the last thing, the Wheeler Library, $18,000. Well, we know we just approved the Wheeler Library, $1 million for the Wheeler Library renovation project. That number is in this budget. When you looked at that first page on the debt, we increased the debt by $156,000. With that debt increase, we're still at 1.82 overall on the budget. So now turn the page. So where else do we save money? So the assessor's office, if you're familiar with the town hall, we used to have a full-time assessor and a full-time assessor's clerk. We still have the clerk. Cecile's been there for a number of years, but we now have a part-time assessor. The assessor we have works full-time in Stonington and part-time in North Stonington. So we save between the pay we pay the assessor going from full to part, and by not paying the benefits, because our benefits are coming from Stonington, we save them medical, insurance, retirement, and so on. So we have a $72,146.52 saving in that department. And on B25 emergency information technology, a year and a half ago, we decided to get away from having a IT manager. We let that gentleman go. It wasn't doing a good job for the town. And I approached all other towns I knew that had under 10,000 residents. I said, how do you do this? Because we have a full-time IT manager. It's the third one we've had in about 4 years. And they said, we all do a third party. We outsource our IT. So we did that. We went to Star Computers. And since we did that about 9 or 10 months ago, everything's been working fine. Again, because it's a third party, we don't have to pay benefits. So we're saving $40,618.10 by having a third party. And the school did the same thing with Learn. So the largest increases in the budget are what? So fixed charges, which is insurance and benefits, that's an increase of $18,385, which we have very little control. Public safety, which is the fire company, the ambulance, and the animal control officer, there's a $46,879 increase. Transfer station tipping fees. Now, I didn't know what a tipping fee was until I got this job. And then now I know what it is. It's when we take our trash to the incinerator and we dump it, you're tipping the truck, the trash that falls out, it gets weighed. And we pay so much per pound for this. So with the tipping fees being, we expect our expenses to be $119,115. We have also a revenue line, A5.10 revenue line of $94,258. So basically the tipping fees are only costing us the difference in those two lines. So it's around $24,000. So it's not as bad as the 119 sounds. Senior citizens. So last year in the budget, we had a lot of outcry. We were talking, if you remember, the given clause was a big topic of conversation in last year's budget. And also 501c3s, nonprofits were, and why do we give to some nonprofits and not to others? And we said, well, a lot of people thought we should have our own director of human services. With Teresa Pence's retiring at the end of March, that's exactly what the town did. We're hiring a full-time Director of Human Services. So we still have the senior center, still have the agent for the elderly, and now we have a new Director of Human Services, which will pick up that slack where we didn't have. So if you weren't a senior and you were in crisis mode, whether it had something untimely like a death, a fire, an accident, loss of job, and you're in crisis mode, you don't know where to turn. Well, if something's happened to an animal, we know where all turn. We see on social media just says call Kasha, and she makes all animal problems disappear. So we wanted to have a Kasha of Human Services, and that's what we did. So we hired this woman named April. She starts on May 4th, and she's going to be wonderful. She's been doing this for over 20 years in other senior centers and I think she's had 3 main jobs over the last 25 years. And she's going to be excellent. She's starting with us on May 4th, but we went from a part-time to a full-time because we wanted to add this piece on, if you're not a senior and you're in crisis, where do you go? So we want everyone to know this is where you go. So we want April's name to be as synonymous with crisis as Kasha is with animal control. And Kasha does a wonderful job, and that's why I bring her up. I've told her this. School maintenance contracts, that's the $100,000 I just spoke about. So obviously that moved the needle on the budget, but also if I took that $100,000 out, the needle would drop. So the budget referendum question, you're going to see this at the town meeting. The numbers might change because the Board of Finance may make some changes after this meeting on Wednesday. But the question will be, shall the town of North Stonington approve the estimates and recommendations of the Board of Finance with respect to the annual budget, including the general government operating budget, $6,212,968, the redemption of debt, $1,539,499, I said that includes the library, and capital, $437,625 for the fiscal year July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2027, and the total amount of $8,190,092. So that's the question. You see that question number 1, 2026-27, the $8,190,092. But right underneath that, you see 8 million, I wish it was thousand, sorry, Ann, I wish it was thousand, 8,150,298, which is actually an increase of only $39,000 from last year. And if we didn't have the library included, and no offense to the library, because we did overwhelmingly voted for this, our budget this year would actually be $116,756,000 less than it was last year. But the library added $156,000 to the budget. So that's without the Ware Library. And that pretty much summarizes how we handled the budget from the time we started to the time we finished. And again, as you look at the budget, if there's any questions, and as you go through it, I know Mike said we're going to have public questions later on, public comment. If there's any question there on any line that I didn't talk about, please ask me. I'll be glad to answer your questions. John, are we doing questions now?
I'm fine with that.
You have a question? You have to come up here. Oh, John, that doesn't look good.
I'm questioning, we talked about I saw that you are planning the mill rate to be lowered, but I'm looking at the line A100, the general property taxation,
Yes,
and that number far exceeds the budget we're looking at. I'm just trying to understand if that's just for the real property, and then 2 lines down is supplemental taxation for the vehicles. Why is this number $27,000? I realize there's other numbers added in there, when last year it was only about 18 million, and now we're collecting over 27 million.
so the 27 million is estimated at the current mill rate, which is 28.88. So the Board of Finance will then determine what it would cost the town to pay for the budget we're presenting and bring the mill rate down to compensate for that.
Right. So what you're saying then is this budget as presented is not what we'll be voting on?
You're voting on the expense part of it, not the revenue part, because we have to represent that as the current revenue at today's mill rate, because they're not going to be dropping the mill rate until the Wednesday after the referendum. So if the referendum passes on May 18th, On May 20th, the Board of Finance will come together and officially lower the mill rate.
Okay, so all we're voting on is on the expenditures.
Correct.
So your increases, the expenditures have nothing to do with the revenue side of this picture.
Exactly. I wish they did, because if we could tell that story, it'd be easier to get budgets passed, but you don't see the revenue. And that's why I was trying to explain some of that as far as the explanation for the EB and the building inspector is part of it. But I think Mike's going to address the mill rate reduction in his presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else now? If not, you can wait till public comment. And are you trying to get up to say something?
No, I just wanted to move the seat for a minute.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, just so if everyone, John's question is, right now, the revenue that's projected is using our mill rate that now, which is 28.88. So if the grand list multiplied by that mill rate, we'd have far more revenue than these budgets require for expenses. And that's why after we know what the budgets are, and then we work with the mill rate to bring the revenue that we're using out of that grand list to match the expenditures. So I'll explain that in a little bit. Board of Ed.
You can go first.
Good evening. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to mention some of the incredible work of North Stonington Public Schools and the impressive accomplishments of our staff. If we could just go to slide 2. Thank you. A lot of what we are working on was validated by the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, also called NEASC. They visited us in the fall for something called the Collaborative Conference. This is a process that every high school has to go through every 10 years in New England and other areas of the country. And they'll be coming back in the fall of 27 to determine our ongoing accreditation, but we've added the elementary school on board. We're the first town in Connecticut to do that. There are several towns also now working on it. It doesn't cost us any more to add to elementary school. So it's a real nice feather in our cap, and that's on the path forward. Some of the areas that they agree that we should continue to work on is our curriculum. That's what kids are learning. Our instruction, which is how kids are learning that. Also, our technology, both our instructional technology and our infrastructure. And I'll talk a little bit more about our infrastructure of technology later. And then something called the vision of the graduate, which is basically what do we want every graduate of North Stonington Public Schools to know and to be able to do. What skills do they want? We want them to have. And it kind of just guides a lot of the instruction. Also, a lot of the work is supported by embedded professional development, job embedded in-house, where we have administrators, we have program supervisors, but a lot of the work and professional development days are actually organized by our director of instruction and learning. So we really have great structures and together with other teacher leaders to drive that ongoing improvement in what we're doing for kids. Let's go to the next slide, please. Wheeler, we're not going to, we'll talk about every point here, but just know Wheeler is the 7 through 12 school and they're continuing to work on things. One of the things is trying to reimagine the Library Media Center. And last year, we actually took a cut in staffing there. We're trying to build it back slowly as we reimagine it to better serve our staff and our students. And we're making great progress on that. Also, we're looking to upgrade what we offer for middle school activities and sports. And our athletic director oversees a lot of that work. One of the things is just looking at a rotation of new uniforms because we can't buy new uniforms every year for all sports. So just kind of planning ahead and prioritizing. Next slide, please. The elementary schools done tons of wonderful work over the last few years, upgrading the curriculum with a new math program, a new reading program. The teachers have worked really hard to learn those. They now have a standards-based report card, so parents are getting more specific information about what their kids are learning and in how they're growing in their skills. And we also look to continue to develop our what we call our STEAM initiative. STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And there's a lot of, it's really interdisciplinary learning where you're combining the subjects into one kind of real world project. It is more like applying learning to real life situations. And so we're really proud of all the work that our schools are doing. Next slide, please. Our special services they have done a lot to improve over the last few years. And one of the areas is compliance. There are special education laws and regulations, and there's documentation that's required. It has to be correct. We have to make sure that we're serving all of our kids well, no matter what their needs are. And we're quite proud of what we're able to offer our students. We have a unified program where we have students with disabilities interacting with non-disabled peers in sports and in things like a prom with other schools. So we continue to look for opportunities for all of our students to get the best education possible and feel included in that sense of belonging. And professional development is a major focus, and there are a lot of people in this department, like school psychologists, speech pathologists, who have a real special need for their own adult learning. And we're really focusing on that and giving people what they need so they can stay up to date with the best practices to teach the students. Let's go to the next slide, please. So instructional technology, we're in good shape and we're getting in better shape. We have more to do. Much of our technology is not actually in the budget. The Board of Ed made a commitment to spend their money from a non-lapsing account that was from previous year's budgets. They're able to put any remaining money into that account and then use it for things that came up. They used it a lot to dig us out of the cybersecurity incident you may have heard about in the fall. And they spent a lot of their money to help us with that. We had like over $40,000 of lawyers' fees. We had $60-some thousand in a cyber forensic team that we had to hire from the outside. By the way, we paid $0 ransom dollars on that, even though that was requested. And we got through it because, as Bob mentioned, we partnered with a technology, outside technology in LEARN. LEARN is our regional education service center. There are 6 of them in the state, and LEARN is ours. And we had already partnered with them when our technology director had resigned 2 years ago. And it's been a great savings because, like Bob said, we don't pay benefits. We just pay for the service hours that were provided. So that's actually was a huge savings last year in the budget and continues to be a savings moving forward. So, for example, all the Chromebooks that could be in a teacher's hand, the Board of Ed committed to buying all of them with the non-lapsing fund. Not in the budget. Not in the budget. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So one of the things we were already working on upgrading our infrastructure for technology. Okay, that's our servers, our access points that boost up the strength of the internet, our switches, which are those are the things that hide in closets, and all those wires are plugged into it, and for the phones and for the internet. And there's a lot to it that the average person probably doesn't even realize. In order for the internet to function, you need all this. So we were upgrading it already, but then we got attacked by the cybersecurity incident, by these they call them the threat actors, and they're not real They just want your money. They're not real empathetic. So anyway, it forced us to upgrade further and to strengthen the security of our technology further. And we're almost there. Okay, over the last week, we upgraded the whole elementary school to a new camera system. So much safer now, internal, external, 45 new cameras, and we're able to do that with the current budget. So we don't have to budget for that next year. And the Board of Ed agreed, let's go to the next slide and you can see some of the things that they've talked about not putting in their budget. If they put all these things in their budget, adding up to $163,000, our budget would not be at 2.5% increase, it'd be 3.52% increase. Okay, so these things are not in the budget. Because there's all the Chromebooks you can see there. There's the technology infrastructure I was just talking about. We just need to get some access points to boost internet and some switches to replace some at the elementary school. And then we're good. Upgraded technology infrastructure for like 5-6 years. Don't have to budget anything for the next 5 or 6 years. It's not even in the budget. Board of Ed decided to do that out of the non-lapsing account. By the way, the Board of Ed can't do all that in the non-lapsing account because they don't have that balance yet in a non-lapsing account. So they may have to prioritize. And let's go to the next slide, please. So enrollment is holding steady. It's holding steady. And we, though, are, as our board chair, Christine Wagner, may talk about, we are losing some positions. We're losing positions, but we're not losing enrollment. And so we're doing more with less or more with not more. But we do believe we've been very efficient putting this budget together. And we believe we're going to be able to serve the kids of North Stonington really well. All right, so Christine, I think you're taking over at this point.
Thank you. All right, so if we look at this next change, the biggest task I think right now the Board of Ed has is that we are always trying to balance high quality education with sustainability to the taxpayer. We realize that we have a large budget in this town compared to the selectmen's budget, and we are always looking for ways to save and to balance that number. We'll see as we go further down, attrition's a really big thing. So when we have staff changes, position changes, retirements, we are always looking at now, how can we do it a little bit different? What we don't want to do is just take our staffing and rubber stamp it with a contractual increase and say, well, that's what it is. So we're always looking at ways, the central office is always looking at ways to do it smarter, more efficiently, and still not jeopardize the education of our students because we have an excellent school here. Enrollment is holding, as Troy had alluded to. Our budget changes where we started this year was at $16,056,441. Our initial Board of Ed budget, which was after the superintendent brought us his budget, this is where we brought it down to, was the $16,939,347. And in feedback from working with the Board of Finance and amongst ourselves, we were able to bring it down even further to an overall increase of 2.5%, resulting in the $16,457,814. The next slide is the pie chart that we always show and doesn't change a lot year after year. And you'll see that our salaries make up a big portion of it. But without our teachers, we don't have a school. So they are the most important part, so should probably be the most important part of the pie chart. And if you go to the summary on the next page, you'll see this is kind of the overview of where the biggest increases came from and where we were able to make the biggest impact in lowering our budget ask. Salaries went up about $221,000. That was contractual, of course, but we were able to do some things through attrition where that number would have been quite a bit bigger had we not made some of those changes. We are anticipating our medical benefits going up this year. If you can recall, the last few years, we've been fortunate enough to actually see decreases in the medical line item. This year, that is not the case, and this is the number that we are anticipating being at now. We were able to cut a few things out of the central office line item from contract negotiations. We moved that line into the non-lapsing account, as Troy spoke about, and we won't need to budget for NEASC expenses this year. We're anticipating a really large increase in our special services this year by about $76,000. And then there's about another 20,000 in that, in the other expenses schools line item of the budget that you'll see some increases there. Maintenance services, we did a lot of work on the general building services, as Bob Carlson alluded to. We worked really hard, not only just to transfer some of those expenses that we are doing, but to actually lower what we're putting into that line item. So you're seeing, after quite a bit of robust conversation, we were able to bring that number down by 39,000 over last year's budget. Utilities, we're having a pretty big increase, seeing a pretty big increase in natural gas at the elementary school. So we are having to budget for that. And we moved the sewer and trash out of general building services and created new line items. It was good feedback from the Board of Finance, actually, that those really shouldn't have been in the maintenance services, but that they should be coming out of utilities. So that's why you're seeing kind of a little bit of a shift there as well. Tuition, we've got a little bit higher magnet school enrollment. When a child chooses to go to a different school, like a magnet school or a VOAG school, we do pay that tuition. And then again, the technology. So we've done a lot of work with the technology. After the cyber event, we found that we had some holes that we needed to plug. And one of them was purchasing a new cybersecurity that we've gone ahead and done. We've had to do some things with the doors, the badge system, and we have had to replace our Naviance program at the Guidance Center to a School Links program. But we do have an IT, a technology purchasing plan in place for each year. And we do not, just as the town doesn't want to go away from capital, we do not want to zero out our technology. It's critical to the education. So we have found ways to fund that outside of just putting it into the budget, which is what Troy was talking about. We are looking to use our non-lapsing for quite a bit of those purchases this year. We've had years in the past where we've zeroed out that line item, and then we've just had to play catch up, which is kind of what we're doing right now. If we go to the next slide, there are some things that do bring money into the town for the school. The state gives us an educational cost sharing fund of $2,660,307. That is flat funded from what it was last year. There's constant talk up at the Hill about that number, the equation, how they come up with that. But we're feeling pretty satisfied that we're at least flat on that number. We are also a school of choice for some surrounding districts, which is now anticipated to bring in $527,000 to the town next year. That money does not go to the school, it goes directly to the town. Of course, it comes to us in the form of a budget, but it is some additional revenue. And it's been really nice to be able to share our educational experience with surrounding districts, and they're really finding it to be a great choice for them. On a side note, we're coming to the end of our tuition cycle, and we are in the process of reviewing that and looking at what we're charging surrounding districts to make sure we're competitive with other districts, but not underfunding as well. And so if you look at the total town expense on our budget, this is just taking out new revenue coming in, that our actual budget would be $13,269,606. We always give a budget history slide to kind of see where we've been. So, you know, you've seen some years where we've been at 0, some years we've been at almost 5. So we're hitting right about where the 10-year average right now is, about 2.5%. We're going to lose that 0% next year. So our average isn't going to look as good. Maybe we'll take this slide out. Yeah, that's right. right. One thing I do want to look at though is the staffing. I think it's really important that we look at this as we talked about with attrition and where we're at. We're actually down about 3.5 under staffing. When you look at regular ed teachers, some of the other positions. Like I said, when we do have retirements, we do look at that and see if there's a different way to fill that. We've had a few retirements this year and we are working to fill those positions a little bit differently, structure a little bit differently. There's always ways to do it a little bit differently, but still not sacrifice education. And I really hand it to our administrators for looking at that and always finding ways to do it without having to increase staff. And also, we don't want to lose staff by having to let any go. If you've seen what's happening in some other districts, layoffs can be really ugly for morale and really difficult on a district. We have not had to do any of that. So when you see this number, even though it's lower than last year, that's not due to laying people off. Okay. And that's kind of the overall. I mean, you'll see we handed up the budget in detail. If you have any questions, I'll do my very best to answer those. And I have backup here as well. Yes.
I'll yell at you. Do we do anything with other schools, other districts, as far as supplies and service and that kind of stuff to get better prices on that kind of stuff, on supplies and what other services we do?
Well, you know, I'm,
Can you just repeat the question, Christine?
so the question was, do we work with other schools on supplies and, you know, maybe buying in bulk with other schools, things like that? Not that I'm aware of. I think every school has such a different need, and then it would be a transportation kind of issue of getting it, maybe. I'm kind of guessing on that. Troy can elaborate. I will tell you, in the past, though, we used to buy a lot of supplies. And we would have closets full of stuff, like, well, we got it cheaper if we buy in bulk. It's like, well, that's all good and fine, but we still paid a ton for it, and then it would get old or go to waste, or we'd not use it. So we've really trimmed into buying just what we need, if that helps as well. And Troy, do you know any more on that?
No, but I'll tell you that I get together with small town superintendents regularly, and we're always talking about how can we work together to save money. And I'll bring that up to them and see if they think it's a possibility of saving some money on supplies, but we haven't talked about that. We're talking about transportation and other like shared staff and that type of thing, but it's a good thought.
I know a lot of the other towns, and then maybe even some of us, highway departments, and that kind of stuff, they share.
Guys, we gotta use the microphone because there's people online for the Zoom.
I don't know if this, okay. If other parts of the town, the general government, the highway department and that kind of stuff, I think they, help use services from other towns and combine their efforts for buying and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you gotta get some breaks on some of that kind of stuff. And as far as other supplies, do you have to, when you buy it from a house, they can drop it off in 6 different areas. That's what Amazon does, and they still make money on it. So there's ways, I think, of reducing costs that way.
We'll definitely inquire about that. Thank you.
The district is also, they are part of a consortium with regard to the medical costs, which has been very beneficial for keeping the medical costs low. If we were on our own, it would be a lot worse. So that's with other districts.
Oh, there's one in the back.
Just tell us who you are and where you're from, please.
Nobody else did. I'm Lynn Faulkner, 3 Darbucks Valley Road, North Stonington. With the superintendent leaving the end of June, did you look into sharing that position with other school districts in your budget process?
We have looked at all kinds of options. We're in the process of hiring that position right now. We actually hired a consulting firm to help us with that, which is there's a lot that goes into hiring a superintendent. It's probably the biggest job we do as a Board of Ed. So we have looked at several different options, and we're right now ongoing in that process.
the salary is in the budget as a full-time position as it is now.
It is, and we did post the position as a full-time position. But before doing that, we did a lot of research on that. There's been some studies out on that, and we've done some work on that.
Nicole Porter, 44 Pinecrest Road. Christine, in the decrease in regular education teachers that I saw, I think you said it was like 3.5 over the last couple of years. One of the things that I know when my girls were there is the low student class sizes. Has that impacted class sizes at all? Or will it impact class sizes next year?
The only one, do you want to talk to that, Troy? Because it's more of your,
The impact on class size will be in grade 6 only. Rather than splitting the kids up into 4 sections, which is what they have done, and they've had, really class size of anywhere between 12 to 15 kids. They'll have class size of 18, 19 kids, 20 kids, like the other grades in elementary school. That's the impact.
yeah, and just some background on that. If you remember when we built the other school, we moved the 6th grade from the middle school back over to the elementary. So that stayed with 4 teachers, but every other grade in the elementary has 3. So it will mirror that.
Brian Rathbun, 263 Grindstone Hill Road. When you speak of attrition, like the fellow was mentioning, now, if you say, okay, well, budget's lower because of attrition, but if you hire the people back, then where's the savings there? I don't see it. The other thing is, I totally agree with, you got a perfect opportunity now, especially with the superintendent, sorry. But and I believe it's by law, you can have combination of part-time or go to another district school and maybe one superintendent for a couple of schools, which should save us some money, I would think, plus benefits. You showed where you're doing it for some of the teachers there. We're saving on some of the benefits. And that's the whole thing I see, because, well, very well, I was in a union a long time ago, and I know how they play. You came in, you said you had a high, very high budget increase, but that was your want. You knew you weren't going to get that. And then you went back and said you didn't get any direction from the Board of Finance. And that really bothered me. I mean, I sat here, I understood what the Board of Finance was saying. And then you came back again. I saw the meeting where you talked about getting rid of a para. And then with a few sentences later, they said, well, we can get rid of the para, but in the middle of the year, we'll ask for an appropriation for the education. The special needs, which to me, that's a game. I don't like the games. I wish we'd come right out and be honest with the integrity that the Board of Selectmen came out with. I'm sorry, but I had to say it. It's been on my mind for a long time. Thank you.
Just to answer to that, Brian, we are moving forward with what we think we need right now for staffing. We aren't taking any position out that we think we need to add later. And that conversation was just based around, like, as we saw this year, special education increased significantly. If we have a child move into the district or needs change or something changes that we don't anticipate now, we have to provide for them. But as moving forward with this budget and where we are for staffing now, we feel strongly that what we have in place will take care of all of those needs. And we did take the guidance of the Board of Finance. Absolutely. I don't know if I just misspoke and said we didn't, but that's not how it meant to come out. We absolutely listened. I think we worked well together this year and took that guidance.
We're moving on. I'm just going to hold any, I know I'm going to allow people online to ask questions, but I'd rather just move on to the next presentation and then we'll take all questions and comments. Just to address Brian, I appreciate you coming to every single meeting. You always provide great feedback. The three boards here have different roles. The Board of Education's role is to provide the best education possible for their students and to come up with a budget that they think best makes that happen. And it may not align with the budgets that we want to see. But usually those initial budgets coming from the superintendent is what he thinks would maximize student potential. And then the Board of Education takes that budget and knocks it down to what they think is the bare bones but the best budget they think is going to provide for the students. And then our job as the Board of Finance is to tell them, well, we can't afford what you want to have in your budget, and go back to the drawing board. That's how the process works, and there's nothing nefarious about it. We have different boards doing different things for different reasons. So, start our presentation. Obviously, this is the major budget conditions for this year, was the reval. We understand that when everyone got that piece of paper in November, most of us fell on the floor, including myself, but that was high on our minds. I think all of the board's minds when we went through this process this year. Obviously, we need to still support the need town's capital needs fully and with foresight. We've had several years now working off of 5, 10, 20-year capital plans, and the Board of Finance number one goal is no cuts to capital. We are not kicking the can down the road anymore. We're just not doing it. So that budget was actually developed and maintained in January and has never changed. Obviously, we need to support the operational needs of our schools and town government to focus on sustainability. To Christine's point, we see contractual increases in a lot of areas, particularly at the Board of Ed. And everyone has, people who are on fixed income, Brian, they want to see an increase for cost of living. It's no different for teachers and town staff that have union contracts. And we always want to manage our undesignated fund within our Board of Finance policy limits. And obviously the goal in the end is always to accomplish a balanced budget. And once again, we're doing that this year. And then this side, let's cut to the chase. So for fiscal year 26-27, we're presently projecting a mill rate of 19.61. So obviously that's way down from our mill rate of 28.88. So what happens is you have the assessor every year is going to look at give us the grand list, the net grand list. It's everything that's taxable. It's real estate, it's private property, it's motor vehicles. And because the reval came in and it went up roughly 45%, the net grand list, then the mill rate has to go down to kind of balance that. And we've determined with that 19.61, if you compare what was taxed last year, we're actually going to be taxing it 551,000 and change less with this 19.61. And I'll show you a slide. So we're going to tell you how we did it. the budget stuff happened well before budget season, with last fall. I talked about our undesignated policy, undesignated fund policy, and I'll go into further on that in a bit. But we have upper thresholds in floors and ceilings. The ceiling is 17%. We found ourselves well over that last fall. And per our policy, we have a year to determine what to do with it. We voted to direct the Board of Selectmen to use up to $700,000 for capital items. So 316,466 came off of this year's capital budget. And there'll be additional, just under 400,000 over the next 2 years that come off the capital budget. So we maintain our capital plan. This year, next year, and the year after, there'll be a reduction because of what we used our taxpayer money in the undesignated fund that was above our policy to lower that amount. The rest is just how we went about it in February and March. We had 5 different draft budgets from Board of Selectmen, 3 draft budgets from Board of Ed to get to where we are. And it's a total of 1.82% increase was voted to come to you today. Next. So obviously this is the slide that was on Bob's non-presentation. So the people at home, you can actually see what the budget looks like right now. You see the 316,466 in capital as a negative. That's what I just talked about. And there's the rest of the changes for a total 1.82. And as Bob alluded to, we voted as a town to approve the Wheeler project. And that was to obtain a loan up to $1 million plus the interest and costs of getting the loan. And presently is projected a loan payment of $156,550. Now, we haven't taken that loan. We won't take that loan until we know that the library is ready to go with their project and when they need the money. So if something happens where it gets delayed, that money is never going to get used until, we have to owe it, but we're budgeting for it right now. That's in the debt line. So this is the expenditure budget, and to John's question earlier, the big thing, the big picture, we can't show you when you go into the voting booth and when every taxpayer goes that didn't come to this meeting, just sees these expenditure budgets. The revenue side is very key to determining what we think we can afford in a single year. Next. So everyone's got their things in front of them because that's a little harder to see, but use your papers in front of you. The grand list increased by 45.09% after the October 2025 reval. Real estate went up 62%. Personal property went down 21%. I'll get to that in a second. Motor vehicle went up 3.53. Gives us a total of 45.09. According to the assessor, the median assessed value of North Stonington homes is $292,590. Now, as you all recall, an assessed value is 70% of the appraised value. So you do the math as to what the appraised value is. It's 400 and something most likely. That big decrease in personal property was due to a legislative snafu. The legislature, in conjunction with all the solar industry, has decided to allow new projects that go online after July 1st, 2026 to not be put on the grand list. They're going to be given a kind of like a payment in lieu of taxes based upon the kilowatts of the farm. The solar industry was getting killed throughout the state, with different towns assessing things differently. So It only is supposed to apply to new solar farms after July 2026. Unfortunately, they made the grand list that it affects October 2025. So our assessor had to wipe 2 solar farms off of our grand list that cost us $16,328,330 off of our net grand list. The legislature is presently has a bill in front of, on the floor, it hasn't been voted on yet, to change that one little line to October 1st, 2026, when it was supposed to. And I've said, I am supremely confident that our legislature will do the right thing and change that date. And then if they do, that 16,328,330 goes back on the grand list. Okay? And I'll talk a little bit more about how we're going to deal with this issue in the meantime. And the next slide is at 28.88. No, keep it back, please. Next bullet point. You multiply that by that 45.09 number, but 1.4509. The adjusted mill rate, if nothing else changed from revenue and expenditures from last year, the mill rate would be 19.9. That's what would have to cover last year's expenditures with the other additional revenue that we have. So we're actually going lower. We're going to 19.61. The town's other revenue sources not related to the grand list increased by 9.9%. Notably, we have 3 solar farms in the town. One is Ella Wheeler, and that is a contractual arrangement that was made by Sean Murphy when they came in. That they're not on the grand list. They pay more each year, and this year they're paying $106,669. And somehow that revenue was not being accounted for in past budgets, but we found it. This legislative issue kind of got me digging and the assessor digging into, and the tax collector into digging into how our solar farms are now, and that 106 was discovered, and so now that's part of the revenue. We have a $25,000 increase in interest revenue. Again, thanks to Sean Murphy when he was treasurer, he has our money making money for us. So we have 125,000 budgeted for that. It's up from 100 from last year. We have increased building official fees on the regular official, and 130,000. The Bob talked about the fact that we have to pay the 300, but we're getting 200 additional. 70 is being accounted for in this year, and so we're accounting for 130,000 of that 200 in revenue for next year. Next. So this is a slide that Lou Gingerella was able to do. It's just nice because the top section you have the budgets as they are and the budgets as they were for this present fiscal year. Again, we have the 1.82% increase. It's 441,000 and change. What's important to note is that the property that we tax, that the town taxes, your houses, your cars, and your personal property, it's only part of the story. A big part of the story is the other revenue that we get, and we had large increases in that other revenue. That's not your tax revenue. Again, the Wheeler Farm went up, the additional taxes, and these are all on the budget that Bob provided. Those the line items are right on the past page. So it's A105 for that additional taxes. Use of town money interest again went up to 125 from 100. Intergovernmental went up 4.64%. The licenses and fees, again, that reflects the additional money coming in for the EB building permits. and other revenue went up 6.98%. So the total additional revenue was 9.9% increase. And so the present expenditures, in order to, because we lost that money off the grant list, everyone, remember, we'd have to have a mill rate of 19.95 to cover those expenditures that were presented tonight. And even so, we would be collecting 237,647,000 less in revenue from your property taxes. Because this additional revenue went up higher than the expenditures went up. Next. So again, even at 19.95 mils, 237,647 less in property taxes would be collected. And given that I'm supremely confident in the legislature, we felt we could do more to help the taxpayers. So what I did and what the board did was, let's take a look at the mill rate, what it would be if the solar farms were back in the picture. Next. So here's, you might recognize this from past years. This is the one I normally present with. Again, it's demonstration purposes only because we don't have everything set yet. But the net grant list with the solar farms included would be 952 million and change. You see it up there in the top left. And then you have, we collect at a 98.5% collections rate. So you multiply the 952 by 90.61 mils, so it's 0.0196. We would collect 18,398,886. So remember, John, you were wondering why that number was so big in the budget. It's $10 million less than that. And then, okay, you have all your additional money that you just saw on the other slide. This is the total revenue we have at 19.61. You take the budgets and we have the variance always has to be a positive number. We have at 19.61, we have a little bit extra. That's how the numbers work out. So at the bottom, I did a little calculation. Remember, I told you the median assessed value was 292,590. So if real estate went up 62%, that median person, their oil assessment was 180,611. It's math. Don't ask me how we did it, but it's true. So if that person who had the 180,611 assessment paid the taxes at the old mill rate of 28.88, they paid $5,216.05 in taxes last year. With the new assessment at 19.61, they'd pay $521.64 more. It's a 10% increase. So 62% increase in assessed value, 10% increase in your taxes. That's what I was trying to tell people in the quarterly. Try not to freak out because we don't like it, but if you had a 62% increase, we know that your taxes are going to have to go up. Next. Again, talking about the undesignated fund, we have a floor of 8.5% and a ceiling of 17. If it goes above or below, we have to act. And this is our actual policy language, if it goes over 17% after one fiscal year, we're to refund the taxpayers of the town of North Stonington until the overage is expelled in the form of a reduction of the mill rate or a reduction of town debt. Next. This is where our undesignated fund is presently. And we are actually 505,605.54 above our 17% threshold. Now, some of that's going to be used when we if they vote to pay for the inspector, we'll use 300,000, but it'll get refilled again from the fees that we collect for the building permits. So for all intents and purposes, we have an overage of 2.09% right now that we could use to reduce the mill rate or pay down debt in this process. And that's why we're bringing this to you, because we want to see what you want us to do. Next. So in order to get that same 19.61 mill rate, in case the solar projects, the legislation doesn't pass, we would have to use 308,000 from that undesignated fund to create the same scenario. So that's what we're prepared to do to maintain that 19.61 mill rate. And if the legislation passes, we don't have to use it, and we can use it for other purposes like paying down capital or paying down debt, which is what we will do. We have a year to do it. Go ahead. So same slide from Lou with the additional undesignated fund money in there at the very bottom. We would be collecting 551,078 less in property taxes from the town than we did last year. I think that it can't be emphasized any more strongly that the reval that is given so much consternation, we're still able to do this. This is how good these budgets are and how good our other revenue has done. And I don't think any town around us has anything like this. Next. This is the one that, will show you. I used one person, one household on all of these examples, and then just showed what would happen under different increase in assessment scenarios. So they all started out at 180,611. The mill rate is 28.88. This is what they paid in taxes. If they went up 0%, 20%, 47%, 62%, 73%, 100%, 150, and some people have gone up 200%. So at 19.61, this is what the taxes would be. So you can see the threshold really is around 47%. If your assessment went up 47% or less, your taxes are going down. Your taxes are going down. Those people at 62%, which was the average. Again, it's the 521.64. I went up 73%. I'm paying 17.47% in taxes. So anybody who wants to know what their taxes are compared to last year, you take your present assessment, you multiply it by 0.01961. That will tell you what your taxes are, and you look compared to what you had last year. It's very simple to do. Or if you're close to HIS, one of these numbers, you can kind of figure it out. There's nothing that we can do about the reval. If I have a feeling personally that my house was probably undervalued for tax purposes for the last 5 years. So I caught a break. And now the chickens have come home to roost. Right? So it is what it is. All we can do is try to have the best budgets presented on the expenditure side, take advantage of the revenue that we have that are not from your tax dollars, and use our undesignated fund as we find appropriate. Next. again, I mean, our grand list is continue to expand. We have these projects that are going in that are going to pay dividends. You know, those big projects will have personal property. They will have, the real estate is the real estate. But we seem to be, particularly if you look around other towns, we're doing so well. We had 14 new homes built last year. You know, people want to live here. You know, and we're proud, we made 0 cuts to the capital budget again. You know, we were able to significantly reduce the capital that you guys have to bear in this budget this year, using the undesignated fund. BOS only went up 0.16. Board of Ed went up 2.5, and that's again, that's contractual obligations. They cut everything down to the bare bones. You saw the slide from Christine. What was it? 2.37% of that increase is contractual arrangements, contractual obligations. But my daughter goes to this school. She's a junior. It's an amazing school. She's been here, you know, both of them have gone through where we have a private school education at a public school price. It's truly remarkable what they do. And lastly, again, is that if the solar farm legislation gets fixed, we can forego using the undesignated fund to fill that revenue gap. And we still have to deal with that overage, and we will. And we're really good at it to try to pay down either capital items or pay down debt. And we're here to take suggestions tonight and then at the town meeting, once we have it, about what would you like to see that fund used for? It's all of our money. Next. Again, I'm just really proud of how the boards all work together to bring these budgets together. Again, we built this budget understanding about the reval has caused a great concern. We've done everything we can to mitigate the impact of the revaluation. And again, we're just to sum it all up, we're pleasantly projecting a mill rate of 19.61. Those taxpayers who reval went up less than 47 will see a reduction in your taxes. And we'll be collecting $551,078 less in property taxes from you than last year, the town is. And that's it. And just want to give the mic to you. We have people online that, can you take that down so people can see what's going on?
And Norwalk, Northwest Corner Road. I'm appalled at the $130,000 in permit fees for EB before they even break ground. That's monstrous.
It's not, it's
It's the price of doing business. Why would anybody want to build here? I know it's a huge building, but
It's just for the footings.
it's just for the footings? You're kidding.
This is,
That's just
if
life.
if EB had come to us and tried to negotiate what building permit costs are, they would have done that. It's standard practice. We do it for our homes, we do it for businesses. And we're getting a net in the fiscal budget that we have of 130,000, but it's
I
500,000
just think-
overall.
I'm appalled. That's all.
Well, I'm sure EB appreciates your.
Hi, Sean Murphy, 23 Kingswood. I personally will see a tax increase on my real estate of 11.5%. I won't see an increase in my social security or my pensions of 11.5%. And I'd like to see more done to close that gap. I do have one suggestion, and it was mentioned as a possibility back when we were talking about the Wheeler Library. What you have in the budget now is, I believe, for the Wheeler Library payment is for a 10-year note, amortization over 10 years.
That's correct.
And I would like the Board of Finance to consider, since they are over on the undesignated fund balance, I would ask that the Board of Finance consider making a balloon payment as much as they can out of that undesignated fund within reason, keeping in with your guidelines, and reducing the 156,550 in the budget to what it would be as a result of that balloon payment from our undesignated fund. It's a one-time expense, and it wouldn't, come around, that balloon payment won't come around next year, so we won't feel that in the out years, and it will help folks with the large increases in their real estate property taxes. I did want to mention something that hasn't been mentioned, is that your automobiles. The taxes on your automobiles, of course, will be going down. You didn't see an increase, that same increase in your automobile values. They'll probably, more likely they depreciate. And now you're working on a much lower mill rate. So we will see some savings on automobiles that will offset, real estate. But I'd like to see the Board of Finance to consider that balloon payment as a way to not only reduce individual real estate taxes this year, but reduce the interest that we're paying on that, that we have to pay on that 10-year note. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Christine?
Just real quick, the ECS and the tuition, what line items are those on your revenue sheet?
They're not
part of your revenue sheet?
no, they're not on the town's budget.
Yeah. On
No, they're
that
in-
revenue chart of North Stonington expenses versus collections, because that is money you collect.
That's I'll show you.
What?
That's in intergovernmental. That's an intergovernmental.
Yeah, that was what my question was. I just
Yeah.
wasn't sure there. So
Yeah.
both of those are in intergovernmental.
Yes, they are. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have your mic on?
It's an A3.02.
A3.02. And all of the additional taxes, use of money, those are all, they're all on the budget that Bob has, the government budget. You'll see everything's added up and those bottom lines will match what I have here on. Yes, John.
John Olson, Wyosset Road. I hope you're not tired of hearing me say this every time I come to a meeting, but I'm not tired of saying it. We never do anything, as Sean suggested, about taking care of the people's situations where their taxes go up, but their incomes don't. I don't think I've ever had a tax decrease. This year with the decrease, with the revaluation and the decrease in the mill rate, my taxes are still going to go up about 1,500 plus. I don't have an increase of income like that. I don't have an increase of income like that every single year. But yet every single year, my taxes continue to go up, and the same is true for other people. I know you guys did a great job doing the best you could to keep things as low as you possibly could. But even though we have a reevaluation where other people's taxes are going to go down, it's compensated by others whose taxes go up. It's not a free ride. It's not an equal thing. We all get the same services here, but we sure as hell don't pay the same amount of money.
I agree with you, John. And They're going down.
Lynn Faulkner. I've been to a bunch of the meetings and I totally agree with you. The budget process was dynamite. The school knocked every cent that they could. But I think you got to realize that you can't walk in everybody's shoes, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have increases that don't have any increase in income. And I think you need to anticipate playing some number games after the referendum, because I just don't think that the people can deal with it. Every single thing has gone, I don't know one thing in our lives that has gone down. So yes, you did a great job. And I don't envy you sitting in that position, but it's not a good position for us to be in this year. I have one question for you, though. I know I've seen on the internet that there's some concern about we're not getting our income from the casinos. Is there anything that we can do about getting the state is taking our money like they are with the solar? Is there anything that we can do to get money from the casinos?
I personally don't know. I think that'd be a conversation with our representatives, Greg Howard and Heather Summers. And do you have a quick comment on that? Bob may be able to shed some light on that.
So Lynn, we've been working with the Council of Small Towns, which is called COST. We've also been working with CSAM, the Connecticut Council of Municipalities. They have representatives that are up lobbying for this. We're trying to get the National Pequot Fund fully restored. It was, when it first started years ago, it was at full. The governor decided, Governor Malloy decided that he was so upside down on the state pension plan that he was going to take half of that fund and use it for the state to get better on the state pension plan, which took it away from towns. 70 towns lost the Massachusetts Pequot Fund completely, and the other towns saw reductions in those. So there is a big fight in Hartford trying to get it restored. Even the Massachusetts and the Mohegans are fighting with the towns to get it restored because they think it's only fair. They're getting all the slot money that the state gets should go back to the 169 towns. Now, I don't think it's divided fairly, since we're one of 3 towns that deal with the tribe right here in North Stonington. Legend and Preston all do also. So we're dealing with traffic issues, we're dealing with emergency issues. And you can have some town on the other side of the state is still getting a portion of the fund. So I think that if they fully restore it, we could see an increase, but we can't count on it until after the session ends and see what happens. But that is one of the big numbers. We get, I think, around 800, it's in the budget, 827,000, something like that. And we hope it's not going to be reduced, but hopefully at least gets restored.
Is there something that we can do as citizens?
Well, I think me and the selectmen, as your representatives, have done that by writing letters, talking to the state senator, talking to the representatives. I'm the chairman of the Council, Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments, which is 22 cities and towns. I'm on the board of directors for the Council of Small Towns, and I'm a participant in CSAM on a regular basis on the legislative committee. So I don't know if we could have any more voice than us all writing letters, but are they really going to look at our letters? And I mean, we know how that works, right? So I think that to have the voice in Hartford is what we're trying to do. Greg Howard is there tonight with the House. They're voting on many bills, and I know he and Heather both are trying to get both the Massachusetts Pequot restored and the ECS funding to at least be flat, if not raised.
Go ahead, Brian.
Okay, good. Now I can go. Brian Rathman again.
You're on the clock.
I'm on the clock. I figured I'd beat. Anyways, I wanted to say that I want to commend the Board of Selectmen on their budget. They went back, they cut, as they usually do every year. They always take their budget. I was very surprised that for our first and second, second and third selectmen only got a nickel if you want to count 2,080 hours of time. That's what a regular job is. I know there's not a regular job and they put a lot more hours in there, but we gave you a nickel. Nickel an hour. Board of Finance, I can't say enough. I know it's a tough job. I sat here and I said, well, I don't know what I would have done. But I think your guidance and your understanding of the whole situation was good. I'm sorry you didn't take my recommendation for 0% for the Board of Ed. And I know I spoke on some of the Board of Ed, and I don't like to pound on them, but I see the raises go up and up and up. We only give our selectmen a nickel. The computer education, it's okay. But I mean, I think we're putting so much emphasis on getting those computers to the kids instead of getting them to use their imagination, to use the computer in their head. That's where the ideas come from, person's head. Think about all the great inventions that were invented. Turn your clock back, just quick.
Things like the computer.
They did, but what have we done with them? I sat here during the, I'll say it was a commercial that came here, and I guess they had one at the school.
Yeah.
That's what scares me.
Yep.
You know, I mean, you gotta keep up with it, but you also
You
gotta.
want to wrap?
Okay, I'll wrap it up. I can't stress.
I'll let you come back around at the end.
Huh?
I'll let you come back around at the end.
I was only gonna say another sentence. I was only gonna say one more.
All right, go ahead.
All right. I can't, boy, she hit me. Where was it? Oh. Is that one? The other thing is how, you know, I can't stress enough about sharing the jobs in the school, combining the different jobs. And the other thing I'm hoping, I would suggest that really know what the taxpayers are paying. 40% of the people in North Stonington are senior citizens that are on fixed incomes, and I'm one of them. My taxes are going up too. So with all the other things that go up, the federal government, everything else, boom, there goes my little tiny raise.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, we're all in a tough spot, and I just want to just reiterate that I think that the theme of this year in budget season was sustainability, and you know, there was, you know, it was difficult to get to the places we were, and I know the Board of Ed talked a lot about that amongst themselves after meeting with us, and that you just can't have 4% increases in year over year, and really have to start focusing on how we're going to keep this going, because we're doing great, but it is the increases are happening, and it is affecting everyone's pocketbook, and we're acutely aware. So, you know, we're going to be going forward with that mindset of sustainability, and so your comments are heard. Anyone else in the room?
Sean Murphy, 23 Kingswood. I would like to be reassured with some sort of certainty that the salary numbers that we see in the budget remain what they're being paid and not increased halfway through the year. Just to demonstrate some of the increases here in the budget that we've been presented tonight, the first selectman, second selectman, third selectman, admin assistant to the selectman's office, town treasurer, recreation director, and the wetlands official all receive a 3% increase in the budget. Some of the positions that were changed this current fiscal year, above and beyond what was budgeted this year, will result in the following increases for the following positions. Admin assistant to the assessor will go up 6.95%. The tax collector will go up 9%. Admin assistant in the land use, 7.25%. The planning and zoning official, 7.84%. The town clerks will go up 12.16%. The registrar of voters, 5.8%. Highway foreman, 13.04%. The animal control officer's salary will go up 47.63%. The admin finance official, 5.31%. The accounting generalist, 6.72%. Some of these people are union. Well, four of the individuals are in a union. 3 months after their contract was negotiated, it was decided that a salary survey would be done. And instead of getting the 3% in their contract, that was fine in July. They're double and triple that because of increases that happened this year without knowledge of the average taxpayer. And I hope it doesn't happen again. I understand adjusting pay, and I think based on salary surveys, but I think it should not be done in isolation. The salary survey did not take into consideration our demographic reference group, the size of our grand list, any of the benefits that the people are receiving, how much percentage they pay in medical.
Sean, I'm gonna just, I got it.
Okay, so I want people aware of what has occurred and hope that the Board of Finance.
It was addressed
doesn't allow
at the
it.
time, and I'll say one thing. Lessons were learned. But I'll say one other thing. We have very valuable people that run this town, that do a great job for this town. And that we will not have if they're not paid properly. I agree with you, the process was not correct, Sean. And the Board of Finance told the Selectman's office that this should have been part of this budget and not in mid-year, but there were other factors, including the union losing 2 union positions, that it was kind of a give and take. You no longer have a unionized assessor. We have a part-time assessor. So there's a lot of stories to it. So we don't have time tonight to go into all the details, but there are Board of Finance meetings where this is discussed and you can go back and look at them. But it's been addressed. I'll leave it at that. Michael? Come on up.
Michael Noonan, 32 Meadowood Drive. Good evening. I support both the general government budget and the education budget. I want to thank the boards for all of their work in putting these budgets together and the job the Board of Finance did in giving a number to the general government and to the Board of Education, and for those boards to come back and decide how they're going to spend that money. That's their job, to give simply a number to those boards, and how they determine to spend that is up to each board. I'm here tonight to speak in support of the proposed education budget, not just as an investment in our schools, but as an investment in the entire fabric of our community. In North Stonington, our public schools and the Wheeler Public Library are deeply connected in ways that benefit every resident. Whether or not you have children currently in the school system, together they form a shared ecosystem of learning, curiosity, and civic engagement. Our students rely on both institutions. The schools provide structured, standards-based education, while the library extends that learning, offering access to books, research materials, technology, and quiet spaces to think and grow. Teachers collaborate with library resources, students develop independent learning habits, and families find support beyond the classroom walls. But this relationship goes both ways. A strong school system drives library use, and a vibrant library strengthens educational outcomes. When we fund education properly, we are not just supporting classrooms, we are reinforcing a culture that values literacy, critical thinking, and lifelong learning. And that matters for everyone. Strong schools help maintain property values, attract new families, and sustain a thriving town. They ensure that North Stonington remains a place where people want to live, work, and contribute. Voting yes on the education budget is not simply about meeting immediate needs. It's about recognizing the long-term partnership between our schools and our public institutions and understanding that when one thrives, we all benefit. I urge you to support the education budget for our students, for our shared resources like the library, and for the continued strength of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noonan. I want to see if anybody online for a bit would like to ask a question or make a comment. Just raise your hand. Nobody? Okay, anyone in the room? Nick? That's unusual. Oh, we do have one. There's Jonna. Go ahead, Jonna.
Hey, Mike, there was a couple other people who raised their hand too, just by
Okay.
the way.
I didn't see it there.
When I'm watching online, I couldn't see any of your deck. None of the pages were turning. So is
Say
it
that again?
possible to get a copy of the deck?
We have a ton here. And they'll be at the
Will
town
there be some
hall.
at town hall, maybe like leaves. I can stop by and pick up a ton.
Yeah, there'll be copies of everything will be at town hall, including Bob's presentation that you guys. What's that?
Okay.
Yeah, and the Board of Education have theirs online on their webpage.
Okay. So that was just like a little technical gaffe of your presentation. It was a little tricky to follow, but did you say that folks that had an assessment of,
I can't really hear you. Oops.
can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Folks that had an assessment of 47%, was that what you were saying there? What was that percentage? Of their
47%
assessment?
seems to be the threshold where if you had an assessment increase below 47%, you'll pay less in taxes at the 19.61.
Okay. Because when I asked for the data deck of the town, and when I look at the data, out of the 2,250 properties, residential properties, 33% of them, 759 are 10% or under. The rest of us are over 10%. So I'm just curious, when you guys are saying that you're collecting less taxes this year than last year, how could that be when it's like predominantly most of residents' taxes are going up? Like I'm looking
John,
at
I'd say like I'm the least math savvy person in maybe the room, but. it's
so I
not
guess,
true.
okay, maybe so don't answer that question. I guess my point is, I know some members of the finance committee said, listen, it's not our job of worrying about reassessments and people's values. Our job is to worry about the budget. And that's fine if that's your position. That's not my position, especially when a majority of homeowners, their budgets, their taxes are going up by more than 10%. I think that's a lot.
Okay.
So I'm just throwing that out there. Thank you.
All right. Well, go ahead, Lou.
Yeah, this is something that we've talked about quite a bit. It is, as the numbers show, it is true, we will be collecting less taxes going forward than we did for this year. How that is being allocated depends on the assessment. So basically, about half the people in town will be paying less in taxes and the other half will be paying more based on the 47% break. So that's, so we are not collecting more taxes just because we can, because of the reassessment. The budgets presented show how much money we're collecting. The benefit that we've had is because we've had other income that has been substantially greater than what it was the prior year. If you look at, and some people are using that 60-some% increase, and if you were to use that and back that into the current mill rate and say, why not just go there? That would mean that we would be collecting about $16 million. So we, instead of the 18s, we'd be actually collecting $2 million less. And I guess I'd challenge anybody to say, where would they find $2 million in the budgets that have been presented? I mean, this is, it's 1.8% increase is, I think, extremely conservative. And I think that the assessment is what is driving what you're going to be paying in taxes, in additional taxes or less, not these budgets.
Lou, I just don't think it's accurate that 50% of households are going up and 50% are going down. The math I'm doing is 188 households are going down and the rest of us are going up.
Well, we just had, your volume was really down, Jonna, and then they did something and it blew our eardrums out.
Sorry.
Not your fault. So the median household income, I mean, the assessment was the $292,000. Median means that half the households in town are valued less than that and half are valued above that. Why you don't use an average is because there could be some that are so far up in the high stratosphere that would pull the average one way, or too low down in the depths that it would skew the numbers a different way. That's why they use the median. So I don't know, anyone can talk to the tax assessor to find out what their percentages are. We're just here to deliver, here's what the net grand list is, here's what the expense budgets are. And with the additional revenue we received from other non-tax sources, this is what the mill rate would be on the taxable property. And that's all we can do. If you say, if the budget gets voted down because the expense side is too high, then we'd have to come back and make other cuts. I don't know where those cuts are coming from to provide proper services to this town, to provide the education that our children need. But if they say no to the budgets, it's on the expense side. We've done everything we can up to this point. And I think we've done a very good job. Other comments online? I saw an Ingrid up there and I'm wondering if it's my daughter, because I have a daughter, Ingrid. I doubt it. She's sleeping. Either my wife's torturing her right now. Anybody online, please raise your hand. I'm happy to take questions. Does anyone want a snack? There's stuff in the back. Yes.
There's food back there. Yeah. So I am interested. I'm interested in the people, and you do not need to raise your hand. If you're listening to all of this and you would go to the polls and vote this down, could you share with us where you feel some of the cuts still can be made, other than what might have already been discussed now? Because that is something that we'll have to do. We'll have to, if it fails the referendum, we'll have to go back. And what we want to hear from you is where you think those cuts can come from. What are you willing to live without in town?
Well,
If you're comfortable, and this is, we can't do it without hearing from the public where you're willing to see those cuts. If you have ideas.
Ed O'Gara, 14 Old Colony Road. Question number one, do you have a survey, an estimate of surrounding towns? I know they're doing the same budget process at the same time, so probably not, but an idea of what the average is for this section of Connecticut?
I know Bob has looked at that and
So we're significantly less than the
Yes.
average.
yeah, can you speak to that? What's that? Most towns are between 4% and 6%.
And number two, we don't really have a say on what our home is worth. So the fact that it's the same value, some will go up, some will go down, but we really don't have a say in that.
You do if you want to go to the assessment appeals process.
Right. But in general, it is what it is. And the average is pretty close to the same, just a little bit less. 500,000 less you're collecting, right?
Yes, just based upon what we collected last year at 28.88.
So that did not go up.
No,
And third, for the schools, a lot of those are union, well, a lot of the positions are union, so the salaries have been fixed.
that's what we
by
call,
the
yeah,
contract.
contractual obligations. That's exactly right.
So from my perspective, I don't see you doing much better than what you've done. That's what I'm trying to.
I appreciate that.
Mike,
Yeah.
I think it's important also because a lot of people are referencing what's going to happen to their taxes based on their house values. And we can't lose sight of the fact that the personal property valuation in the town went down $19 million because of some of the things that happened with the solar farms. But nonetheless, that just means the payment of taxes is shifting to the homes more than what it was last year. Now, if that gets reversed, then that'll have a huge impact on what we can do going forward. But that's why when you're looking at this and you're saying my house taxes are going up that much more, it's because we've lost 19 million from the personal property line. And that's what's driving that. Not the amount collected, but that change in valuation.
Sean Murphy, 23 Kingswood. In case I don't make it to the next Board of Finance meeting, I'll mention it now. The assistant, admin assistant, no, I'm sorry, start over again. The assistant town clerk is a 0 in the budget. According to the union contract, it's supposed to be a 3% increase. So that's not a big number because it's basically a stipend for a person, but unless something's changed, as far as how we pay that individual, the assistant town clerk shows in the budget as a 0% increase. Tell us why, Bob.
Not all stipend contracts get the 3% raise. Sometimes sometimes that person doesn't, sometimes the rec department director doesn't get it. Sometimes the land use, what I'm thinking, the water, inland wetlands commission doesn't always get it. So we don't always give the increases to the stipend, the part-time stipend jobs.
This is it's in the union
No,
table.
that's not. The job is not in the union. Her job as the assistant to the land use officer is, but her job as the assistant town clerk is not.
Please double check that.
I will, but that's why she's not getting it.
And one other quick question that Bob, might be B1.15 HR administration. What is that?
So because we weren't doing this, we had no line that was capturing when we sent people to drug testing, to get background checks. So we weren't catching that in any particular line. So we added that line this year, actually added it last year. Because there was no place to put that. So when we get new employees, they have to go from background checks and they have to get medical exams and so on. That's where that is.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone online? Last chance? Just raise your hand if you want. Okay, anyone else in the room want to have a question? Go ahead, John.
I've asked the question of the tax assessor in years past, but never got a straight answer. I don't know if any of you on the Board of Finance know the number, but how many taxpayers do we have in town, residential and commercial together? Does anyone know that number?
No.
Never been able to get it myself. If you can, I'd appreciate it.
Brian?
There's one basic question it's been in my head for quite a while. And that's on B 23.19, where we gave $8,000 away. I never knew what ever happened to it after that.
Which line?
B 23.19.
That was it was this giving closet. Wasn't that right? But we got that money back. No?
We did.
Brian, is your question what? Has that money been returned?
Yeah, I want to know where it is.
So that was an appropriation last year for the giving closet. I just spoke with two of their directors last week. They're still trying to find a new location since they're not in this building anymore. They have not located a new location yet. When they get a new location, which will have to be in North Stonington, or very close to North Stonington, then they'll be able to use that money to move the giving closet forward. But in the meantime, they have not found that spot yet.
So they still have the eight.
They do. I saw a balance sheet of those, and that's come out of that $8,000 so far was the insurance, to buy the insurance they needed. Than when they originally thought they were going to be in this building. So the rest of the balance is still in there.
And I just wanted you to know, once again, I'll say, the reason I'm a stickler on a lot of this stuff is simply because when my mother died, I became the steward of the land that they bought back in 1958. And now I feel like we're being penalized simply because, like you say, it's just the way the numbers are for the tax increases. But I'm not the only one under that situation either, I don't think, because we got a lot of farms here, and I believe they probably got hit with some pretty high taxes. So I'm just saying, I'd like to see a more fair area, how we can do it. If I come up with an idea, you know darn well, I'll give it to you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm hopeful that, well, there's two things we have going for us. We have areas where we're trying to get commercial businesses to build, and EB's building one right now, and hopefully we can continue that trend to take more pressure off real estate taxes. And we'll still be, even if we get more money somewhere else, it doesn't mean it's a free for all. We're taxpayers as well. So, I mean, I think that, we've showed our fiscal responsibility, and we would continue to do so. And we're also, there's, people are still trying to buy houses and build houses in this town because of the quality of education and the quality of life we have here. So, but we're also a community that have to take care of each other. And if someone's reval didn't go up very much and they're paying less taxes, and someone's they're paying more taxes, in the end, we are a community, and we have to, it is what it is with regard to the reval. And there's avenues for you to appeal your assessment, or, which is a process in February. So if you haven't done it now, it's too late. But you'll get a chance again next year. Now, listen, we've I told you, this was a focus on this year has been the fact that this reval happened and some people are getting hurt. Winona's on our board. She got a crazy assessment increase. So we certainly have had it in the front of our minds this whole time. But these are very good budgets that support our town and support our school. And we should have our fourth year in a row and we passed the budget in the first time, which I'm very proud of. Let's keep it up. 5 years, 5 years. Any further questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Aye. Let's get some food in the back.